All right, welcome back. And here's the video that I'd been thinking about making a few days ago. And then I thought, no, we'll wait till the series is done against Vancouver and we'll see where they're at. And for Ottawa, it's not great. Now I'm wearing my Eric Carlson jersey. I don't usually wear the Senators jerseys from last year because they switched back to this logo. But it's reminding me of that logo and how their first year wearing it the first time around was a miserable season of 10 wins. So let's take a look at it. So 2016, 2017, that's the famed year where they get close to something historic. They were 44, 28, and 10, a 598 winning percentage that year. At the number 28 pick, they drafted Shane Bowers, who they would trade. He's no longer in the organization. He was part of the Matt Duchene deal. So 2017, 2018, after nearly knocking out Pittsburgh, getting off to an okay start, not great, not horrible. They were losing a lot of games in overtime and shootouts, not winning a lot. And they decided, okay, we're going to go all in. We're going to go all in on Duchene. So they go all in on Duchene, and it's disastrous. They end up 28, 43, and 11, 409 winning percentage. But at the number 4 pick that year, they drafted Brady Tkachuk, future captain of the team, I believe, either he or Shabbat. Number 26 overall that year was Jacob Bernard Docker. He's a defenseman. The defensemen are noted because they're important, and I'll come back to that. 2018, 2019, they end up 29, 47, and 6, 390 winning percentage, so that got worse. They drafted 19th overall, drafted Lassie Thompson. Now, they did lose in that trade for Duchene. They ended up losing the pick that became Bowen Byram, going to Colorado, and that's a pick that's going to look important later. Or now. The thing is, the number 19 pick, Lassie Thompson, he is a defenseman as well. 2019-2020, they end up 25, 34, and 12, which was actually a winning percentage of 437, their best winning percentage of the 3 seasons of the rebuild. So the idea was they're getting better. They're trying harder, they're getting better. And then the draft, they did pretty well. Number 3, they draft Tim Stützle, who's already in the lineup. I'm taking the E out because everybody's taking the E out. The E was in there, now they're just all taking it out. Jake Sanderson, number 5 overall. He's a defenseman. Having a great year. Looked really good at the World Juniors as well. Number 28, Ridley Gregg. Robbie Yerventi was drafted in the second round, and so was Tyler Clevin. Tyler Clevin, also a defenseman, could end up being a huge steal where they drafted him in the second round in what was a very deep 2020 draft. But it felt like this year was expected to be a better year. And whether it was Pierre Dorian talking about how he had expected, things to get a little better, Eugene Melnick saying he was excited to see how all these new players were going to play, and this was the year that he wanted to see things start building. It hasn't happened. So they're 1-6-1 currently, a 188 winning percentage, which is really historically, again, I look back to that expansion year, and this is looking a lot like that because they started off with a win that expansion year. They won 10 games all year, but I remember watching that game. They beat, I think it was Montreal they beat that night. Alanis Morissette sang the national anthem. She's a national treasure. And it was great. And it was before she was that angsty Alanis Morissette singing You Ought to Know. That's when she was still the pop princess, and she sang it very well. If you don't make the anthem about you, I like the way you sing it. You guys know what I'm talking about. So they won their first game of the year this year, 5-3 against Toronto. And they looked better. All the pieces they brought in, everything went well. They lost the second game on the 16th of January, so the next night, 3-2 against Toronto. But, they've been talking about this, and what I've been seeing is what everybody else has been seeing, which is that if you win the first half of a doubleheader, you're probably going to lose the second half, and vice versa. You lose that first game in a 2-game set, you're probably going to win the second game. So, not alarming, they lose there. And then on the 19th, at home against Winnipeg, so they had 2 days off in between games, they lost 4-3 in overtime against Winnipeg. Winnipeg right now, they're the king of comebacks. They're as adept at coming from behind as Pittsburgh had been for 3 or 4 games before that, before their recent 2-game slide against Boston. But yeah, it looked like Ottawa was going to hang. And I remember the panel on TSN saying, yeah, these guys could end up being one of the top 4 in the North Division. Sure, it's possible. And then the bottom falls out. So they lost their next game at home against Winnipeg on the 21st, 4-1. Then they go to Winnipeg. They lost that one 6-3 on the 23rd, and that was a sloppy back and forth game. But eventually, Winnipeg ends up putting up a 6 spot. And then the 3 game set against Vancouver. Now Vancouver came into that set at 2-5. Vancouver came into that set 29th on my power rankings. Ottawa was 23rd. I'm looking at the power rankings board from last week. And I felt Ottawa was playing pretty well. And then Vancouver just beat them. And it's 7-1 in the first game on the 25th, 5-1 in the second game on the 27th. And last night, they beat them 4-1. So that's 16 goals they allow in 3 games against Vancouver, a team that had been struggling all across the board. They scored 3 against a Vancouver team that, again, came into that series with the worst goals against in the National Hockey League. So they find themselves at 1-6-1. Now their upcoming schedule, on the 31st and the 2nd, they're at Edmonton. So it doesn't really get easier because Edmonton's going to be ornery. Edmonton right now has a record that makes them look far worse than what they are. They've just been unable to get the defense and get the goaltending necessary. And again, many apologies to Mikko Koskinen. He's had to play every single minute, but they're not getting the kind of performance in their own zone that they need in order to succeed. So now they got Ottawa coming in when they're all ticked off, and they got 2 games against them. So Ottawa winning one of the next 2 would be considered a success. Then they go to Montreal for one. Montreal's playing some of the best hockey in the National Hockey League. Then they're at home on February 6th, and then they get Edmonton again. They get Edmonton for 2 on the 8th and 9th, before they then go to Winnipeg on the 11th and 13th, and then their next 3 games are at Toronto, 15th, 17th, and 18th. So between now and the 18th of February, they've got 11 games, and 8 of them are on the road. So as bad as this start has been, it could get a lot worse. Now, the other side of this is the 2021 draft. It's a pretty solid draft class for defensemen. And it's possible Ottawa ends up drafting first overall. They probably draft Owen Power. We may look back at this season and say, you know what? It worked out pretty well. But that's because we're looking down the road. And you have to look down the road with this lineup. So we've got the lineup over here. I want to say, too, that of the players they've lost, and I'm wearing an Erik Karlsson jersey, Karlsson's not the one they're missing. Karlsson defensively is not going to help the Ottawa Senators right now. If they called San Jose and said, hey, can we get Erik back? And San Jose said, sure. And you add Erik Karlsson to this roster, you're going to have more goals for. It's not going to help the goals against. But they do miss Hoffman. And when we look back on that situation, you have to ask yourself, so they lost Hoffman and Karlsson. Did they handle it right? Did they handle it right letting go of both players? They missed Stone, and I know people could point to Stone's contract and say, well, that'd be really expensive for Ottawa. Yes, but Stone might be the best two-way forward in his position on the wing in the National Hockey League. I'm saying on the wing because if I say best two-way forward, people bring up Bergeron, they bring up Couturier. If I say on the wing, I think I'm okay, but he is in the same category as Bergeron, as anybody in terms of two-way forwards in the National Hockey League. Stone is fantastic, so he's worth that money for Vegas. And then Pajot, who sadly left the team last year, and I don't know that you can replace that heart and soul that Pajot provided for them. And the interesting part is that while he's got an extension from the Islanders, I don't know that Pajot will ever mean nearly as much to the New York Islanders and the fans as he did for the Ottawa Senators and their fans. So those are 3 pieces that I think Ottawa really, really misses, that if we went back in time, maybe they find a way to hold those guys. And again, it's a maybe, right? Maybe they wanted out. Maybe it was just time. And again, the money situation, it's a problem, but the team right now, according to Cap Friendly, has the most cap space of any team in the National Hockey League. So they have money to keep some of these players and at least, make the results a little more respectable. You add Stone, Pajot, and Hoffman to this forward group, it's not too shabby. So right now, the forward group, you got Brady Tkachuk, 2 goals and 3 assists so far this season in 8 games. He's a restricted free agent this summer. He's going to be expensive. I would think that if you look around the league, you look at any power forward and what they make, Tkachuk will make that. Brady Tkachuk could be 6.5, 7 million, somewhere in that range. Josh Norris, 2 goals, 3 assists. He's a restricted free agent next summer, 2022. And I've got asterisks next to players that weren't regulars in the lineup last year. Now I could have put one next to Batherson as well. Feels like Batherson's got more experience as a Sen. He's got 4 assists so far. He's a restricted free agent this summer too. Then you have Stützle, 1 goal so far. If they burn off this year of his contract, if they keep him in the lineup, they probably will. He's a restricted free agent in 2023. Chris Tierney, 3 goals so far. Makes $3.5 million. He's a free agent after 2022. It will be interesting to see if this continues, how many of these veterans may become available, and whether or not a free agent who's a UFA this summer is more attractive than somebody that has term. Keep in mind what happened last year with Tampa, right? They added Coleman and they added Gaudreau because they had term. They knew how much they were paying them the next year. There might be a team out there that looks at Tierney's number and says, well, we know we're paying him that next year too, and it might make him more valuable than a guy who's a UFA this summer. Connor Brown, 3 assists. He makes $3.6 million until 2023. I think if they made Connor Brown available, I think there would be potential takers on him. Nick Paul, 2 goals, 2 assists. He makes $1.3 million until 2022. If he's available in the expansion draft, to me, that's a slam dunk for the Seattle Kraken. I don't see that they even think about it for very long. He has played so well to start the season that I would think Ottawa either figures out a way to protect him or they figure out something to do in order to make sure they don't lose him for nothing to Seattle, because he's played very well. Colin White, another challenging year. There were expectations on him, and DJ Smith before the season was talking a lot about how he'd worked on his strength training and he'd been working out a lot in the offseason. He was really, really optimistic, which of course a coach is going to say that. Before a season starts, they're going to be like, well, this guy sucks, but we're going to try him. But at the same time, you do feel bad seeing him with the 1 assist so far, being a healthy scratch at times. He makes $4.75 million until 2025. That contract doesn't look great right now for Ottawa. And where they're at, 31st in salary cap, no big deal. But as time goes by and some of these guys are wanting raises, some of these contracts could end up being problematic. Dadonov signed a contract in the offseason with Ottawa for $5 million until 2023, but he only has 1 goal and 1 assist. It has been a bit of a challenge for him in Ottawa. As things have just completely fallen apart, Dadonov has not been able to get them out of their scoring droughts. Chlapik only has 1 game played this year, no points. He's a restricted free agent this summer, not a big deal there. Paquette is an unrestricted free agent this summer. He has no points in Ottawa. I would not be surprised to see him on the move come trade deadline. Austin Watson, 2 goals and 1 assist, makes $1.5 million until 2023. And with him, you know what you're getting. You're going to get the odd goal here and there. You're going to get fights. You're going to get some inspiring moments. And you're going to get turnovers. And you're going to have moments where, if you're a fan of the Sens, you're probably yelling at the screen for what you're seeing. It's just part and parcel with Austin Watson. Anisimov, only 1 assist. He's a UFA this summer. I don't think they keep him around. Stepan, who's currently injured, he was brought in the offseason to try to solidify down the middle. He's got 1 goal and 1 assist so far, but he's a UFA this summer as well. Galchenyuk, he only signed the 1-year contract, and in 3 games, he has 1 goal for the Ottawa Senators. And that all brings into frame the picture of how DJ Smith is deploying his forwards and how he's making them work or not making them work. And this is why I think when we look at the overall record, it would not be surprising if DJ Smith was fired, by the time this video went live, or within the next couple of weeks, or by February 18th after that last game against Toronto. The expectation is not playoffs for Ottawa. But when you look at that progression they made last year, I would think the expectation would at least be to keep that level of competition up, to stay at a .437 winning percentage, this .188 being unacceptable. When we get to the blue line, there are issues on this blue line, and they weren't resolved in the offseason by the baffling decision to let go of Mark Borowiecki. I still don't understand that. Shabbat, two goals, 2 assists. He makes $8 million a year until 2028. That is a value contract. That's fine. Zaitsev, 5 assists. He makes $4.5 million till 2024. And he plays too much. I think if Ottawa's going to be a playoff team, Zaitsev is less noticeable because he's not getting as much ice time for them. Mike Riley with 3 assists. He's a UFA this summer. Goodbranson has 1 assist. He's a UFA this summer. Goodbranson, when they brought him in, there was some hype around him as well from the coach, talking about how he liked his work ethic and his hitting and all this. But according to the analytics, Coburn, Goodbranson, and Brown have all had their struggles. And they've been a big part of the reason why Ottawa is at this 1-6-1 record. Coburn has 1 assist. Josh Brown has no points. Josh Brown's making $1.2 million until next year, and Coburn is a UFA this summer. And then you've got Christian Wolanin, who has had trouble staying in the lineup, and according to the analytics, he's not been fantastic either. But there are those who will say, why is Wolanin sitting out when Coburn's in for Ottawa? Again, no points. He's an RFA this summer. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Wolanin during the season, because he was expected to play. He was expected to be as high as a top 4 on that blue line if things worked out. And then there's the goaltending, and the goaltending has not been good. So if you've got a team that's got a middling forward group and a defense group that's analytically allowing too many shots, you have to have a goaltender that can bail you out. And Matt Murray is not that goaltender. He's 1-4-1 so far this year with an .859 save percentage. I know he didn't have a great year with Pittsburgh last year. I thought he took too much criticism, but yeah, this year has not been good. It's been poor, and every game you can see at least one goal that you're like, he probably should have had that. He makes $6.25 million until 2024. He signed that extension when he went to Ottawa, and again, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for a goaltender that right now doesn't look like he's a starter. He's young. He can turn this around. I mentioned this not too long ago. I've done videos on Matt Murray and how I like Matt Murray. But right now, he's not giving me any reason to do a video where I try to defend it, because there's not anything this year that I can defend. And then Hogberg, 0-2 with an .867 save percentage. He's a restricted free agent this summer. Don't expect a big raise for him. But there is kind of an issue with goaltending with the Senators. There are, some goaltenders of the future in the pipeline. But Matt Murray was brought in with the idea that he was going to be the present and the future. And so far, that has not worked out. Last season, of course, with Craig Anderson, Anderson's numbers were poor, but Murray's are just, they're worse than Anderson's were. And I'm not sure where Ottawa goes from here. Last year, they had Anders Nilsson come in and win some games and look pretty good in some of those games that he won. And this year, they just don't have that. So it becomes a matter of, and this is the question I have. So the whole idea and the bill of goods that's being sold by Eugene Melnyk, and it may turn out to be correct, is we're going to build ourselves up to be Stanley Cup contenders. And they're looking at the middle of this decade and saying about the middle of this decade, Stanley Cup contenders. But, well, you can look at their upcoming defense. You look at Docker, you look at Sanderson, you look at Clevin. I'm just going to use those 3 as examples. All 3 of those likely top 4 defensemen in the National Hockey League. Now, Clevin, lower upside and more chance of busting than Sanderson. So let's just say Sanderson and Docker with Shabbat 2 years from now. You're still going to need a 4th. I wouldn't think it's Zaitsev. It's not going to be O'Reilly. It's not going to be Goodbranson. Maybe it's Wolanin. But that defense core, while there's a lot of good young players here, they're going to need veterans to keep it together. When you look at teams that pull themselves out of these situations where it's year after year after year of mediocrity, and people always point to Pittsburgh and LA and Chicago, it's not just those top draft picks. It is making the right free agent signings, having the right veterans around them to lead that team, to mold that team, having the right guy behind the bench, having the right system in place, the right goaltender. Everything has to fall in place. Having those top draft picks, like a Stützle, like a Tkachuk, that's great. Sanderson, fantastic. This year, if they end up with Owen Power, cool. But you have to be able to surround that team with guys who know how to win. You have to have the veterans. And at some point, Ottawa's going to have to spend some money to keep that group together. And the one concerning thing to me is that Ottawa had a group in 2017 that was pretty good. And then when those guys wanted raises, all of them ended up leaving town. And it leads me to wonder if when some of these kids' contracts are up, like a Kachuk, not necessarily Batherson, but like, for instance, Stützle. Let's say Stützle, who right now is at 1 goal. Let's say Stützle has a great year next year and he wants a huge raise. And Eugene Melnyk says no. So we're still in a situation where there are reasons to be excited about the future for the Sens, but there are plenty of reasons to be concerned. So that's the question I have. Are you on the side that's excited? You look at all these prospects, you say, it's going to be fine this year. It's another throwaway. Or do you look at this and say, yeah, that's year 4 of the rebuild. How long can this go? And what does it look like on the other side? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.